Have you noticed how the more you chase something, people, success, or respect, the further it seems to slip away? What if the secret is not pursuit at all, but mastery of detachment, so everything begins to pursue you? Most people live as hunters, constantly chasing approval, affection, or recognition, yet end up exhausted and empty-handed. This script reveals a darker, more strategic path how to withdraw, command value, and make the world come to you. A power lies in indifference, in the theater of human desire. The one who wants less holds the reins of control. This is not because they are free from longing, but because they understand that visible hunger diminishes power. When you openly crave attention, wealth, affection, or status, you hand over the strings of influence to those who can grant or withhold them. Indifference, however, reverses this dynamic. It creates a silent authority, a magnetic tension where others feel compelled to prove their value to you, rather than the other way around. To master indifference, one must first dismantle the illusion that desire, when displayed, brings results. Most people believe that by showing how badly they want something, they will inspire generosity or favor from others. But the opposite occurs. Human nature does not reward desperation, it recoils from it. A man who begs for affection makes himself unworthy of it, for his eagerness signals lack of alternatives. A merchant who slashes his prices too quickly signals weakness in his wares. A leader who seeks constant approval from his followers surrenders his command. The moment you reveal that your sense of worth hinges on another's response, you have forfeited leverage. Indifference is not the absence of emotion. It is the discipline of concealing it. It is the art of appearing complete, regardless of outcome. The indifferent person does not plead for attention. They allow others to compete for theirs. They do not explain their value. They let scarcity do the speaking. They do not run after opportunities. They stand so firmly in their self-possession that opportunities feel compelled to run after them. This is not arrogance but strategy, an understanding that the mind craves what seems difficult to obtain and takes for granted what comes too easily. Consider the dynamic between hunter and prey. The hunter chases, the prey flees. But in the realm of social, political, and personal influence, roles are inverted. The true predator is the one who stands still, who forces others to initiate the pursuit. This is why rulers who appear unshaken in crisis inspire more loyalty than those who scramble to justify themselves. It is why lovers who do not chase inspire greater desire than those who smother. It is why negotiators who can walk away command the best deals while the eager are left with scraps. Indifference functions like a mirror. When you are unmoved, others project their own value judgments onto you. They wonder why you do not chase what everyone else seems desperate to grasp. They assume you possess an inner abundance that shields you from the common scramble for validation. This imagined abundance makes you alluring, feared, or respected, depending on the context, but always valued. However, indifference must be genuine at its core. Pretending not to care while secretly vibrating with need will betray itself through tone, timing, and body language. People can smell counterfeit confidence. True indifference is forged through self-mastery, a commitment to reducing emotional dependence on external validation. It is built by cultivating inner resources so that approval becomes a luxury, not a necessity. This self-sufficiency allows you to remain calm when others grow restless, silent when others overshare, deliberate when others rush forward. In a world drunk on constant reaction, your composure becomes intoxicating. Power lies not in chasing but in positioning. The indifferent individual positions themselves as the scarce resource. In relationships, this means creating moments of absence so that presence becomes valuable. In business, this means resisting the urge to oversell, knowing that confidence in your product's worth is more persuasive than frantic persuasion. In politics, it means appearing above petty struggles, acting as though your authority is so self-evident that dissent is beneath response. In all cases, the same principle applies. The one who chases less controls more. The beauty of indifference is that it works in both abundance and scarcity. When you have much, indifference signals that you are not enslaved by possession. When you have little, indifference makes others believe you have hidden reserves. Either way, The illusion of choice remains in your hands. You decide when to engage, when to withdraw, when to bestow your attention. Those who seek your attention learn to wait, to work, to wonder, because you have silently taught them that nothing from you is guaranteed. This strategy does not suggest a life devoid of passion or ambition. Passion fuels achievement, ambition drives conquest. But both must be cloaked behind a mask of composure. The player who reveals their entire hand at the table invites exploitation. The one who plays with stillness makes others doubt the strength of their own position. In human affairs, the perception of need is a weakness. The perception of indifference is a fortress. Indifference also reshapes desire itself. When you no longer appear to seek validation, others begin to compete for the chance to offer it. When you cease chasing opportunity, opportunity chases you. Because the world believes you know something it does not. It suspects that your detachment stems from foresight, from confidence, from some higher vantage point beyond the desperate scramble of ordinary men. It sees your composure and assumes strength. And in a world of restless appetites, strength becomes irresistible, control through withdrawal. The instinct of most people is to move closer to what they desire, closer to the person they want, the opportunity they seek, the reward they hope to claim. Yet this instinct is precisely what weakens them. When one draws too near, they expose themselves. Their eagerness betrays their position, their thoughts, their vulnerability. Withdrawal, on the other hand, creates the opposite effect. It turns the tables, placing you in control not through force, but through absence. Withdrawal is a signal. It says, without words, that your value is not up for negotiation, that your presence is not to be taken lightly. People are conditioned to believe that what is available will always be there, and therefore, they grow careless with it. The friend who answers every message instantly becomes background noise. The leader who explains himself endlessly becomes common. The partner who constantly offers affection becomes expected rather than desired. But when presence is withdrawn, when attention, availability, or favor is strategically withheld, the air changes. Curiosity stirs, anxiety rises, doubt creeps in, and where there is doubt, there is pursuit. This principle is most clearly seen in human relationships. Consider how desire often intensifies when a person becomes less accessible. The moment they cease to respond with predictable eagerness, others begin to question their own standing. The mind of the other starts to race. What changed? What do they see that I do not? Have I lost value in their eyes? These questions gnaw at the imagination, compelling action. They drive the other person to reach out, to prove themselves, to chase what was once taken for granted. Withdrawal forces movement. Movement not from you, but toward you. In politics and leadership, withdrawal becomes a powerful weapon of influence. When a ruler remains silent in the face of provocation, the court wonders at his restraint. Rivals second, guess their attacks, fearing he knows something they do not. Advisors whisper about his intentions, crafting narratives to explain his stillness. In reality, he may be observing, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, but the perception of deliberate distance works its magic long before any action is taken. It grants him control over the tempo of events, compelling others to react while he remains composed and unpressured. The mistake of the weak is to believe that control is maintained through constant presence and assertion. They believe that explaining, proving, or defending themselves keeps them in command. In truth, this approach drains their authority. It makes them predictable, and predictability breeds contempt. Withdrawal, however, creates a void, and nature abhors a void. When you pull back, others rush to fill the gap with effort, attention, and energy. The one who can retreat at will is the one who decides the terms of engagement. Yet withdrawal must be measured. Too much, and it risks creating resentment rather than intrigue. Too little, and it loses its sharpness. The key is to pull away just enough to stir pursuit without extinguishing it. The master of this art withdraws not as an escape, but as a maneuver. They know precisely when to step back and when to return, when to speak and when to let silence speak louder. Their absence is not neglect. It is a calculated pause designed to sharpen the value of their presence. Withdrawal also demonstrates independence, a trait universally respected. When others see that you do not cling, they infer strength. When they see that you are not ruled by reaction, they assume foresight. When they recognize that you can walk away, whether from a deal, a debate, or a relationship, they conclude that your worth does not depend on the approval of others. And once they believe this, the balance of power shifts irreversibly in your favor. The psychological effect of withdrawal cannot be overstated. It plants a seed of doubt. Doubt about whether others have done enough to earn your attention, whether they have misjudged your value, whether they have underestimated your alternatives. This doubt compels them to overcompensate, to work harder, to offer more, to prove themselves worthy. They begin to chase not because they were asked to, but because your absence forced them to question their own position. Strategic withdrawal also disciplines your own emotions. It requires patience to resist the urge to close gaps too quickly. It demands composure to remain silent when you are tempted to speak, to hold back when you wish to surge forward. Yet this discipline refines you, teaching you to value yourself as much as you wish others to value you. It trains you to see that true control is not about overwhelming the world with your presence, but about creating space where the world feels your absence. The result of mastering withdrawal is a form of command that requires no overt display. Others seek your attention not because you demanded it, but because they fear losing it. They make concessions not because you insisted, but because they assume your silence hides strength. They chase you not because you ran, but because you stood still and let their uncertainty do the work. Perception of value is rarely an objective measure. It is a perception shaped not by intrinsic worth, but by how that worth is displayed, concealed, or rationed. People do not chase what they believe is abundant. They chase what they believe is rare. They do not long for what sits openly in their reach. They long for what appears distant, veiled, or out of grasp. Thus, to command pursuit, one must not only be valuable, but also appear valuable. And this appearance must be crafted with precision, for it governs how the world responds to you. In every sphere of life, relationships, commerce, politics, the perception of value determines the direction of power. A merchant may sell an ordinary product, yet through scarcity and careful presentation, convince buyers that it is extraordinary. A ruler may command little real authority, yet through grandeur and ritual, make his subjects believe he holds dominion over their destiny. A man or woman may be flawed and uncertain, yet by masking neediness and projecting confidence, inspire admiration, desire, and loyalty. It is not the raw substance of what one possesses that captivates the world. It is the story others believe about it. This principle is clearest in human desire. The more accessible you appear, the more others unconsciously reduce your value. If your time, attention, and presence are given too freely, people assume they cost nothing to obtain. What costs nothing is taken for granted. Conversely, when you impose boundaries, when your attention is rare, your response is deliberate, your approval earned. You create the impression that you are a prize to be won, not a possession to be handled carelessly. The mind then begins to weave justifications for this scarcity. They must be highly sought after. They must have better options. They must possess qualities beyond the obvious. These justifications inflate your perceived worth beyond what it might objectively be. In leadership, the perception of value manifests through ceremony and distance. A ruler who dines alone, who speaks rarely, whose movements are measured, becomes an enigma. People project strength and wisdom upon him, not because they have seen evidence of either, but because the lack of exposure invites imagination to fill the gaps. By contrast, the leader who mingles too freely, who explains too often, who reacts too quickly, diminishes the aura of authority. Familiarity breeds comfort, but comfort breeds irreverence. When value becomes common, respect erodes. This is why luxury commands such devotion. Not because the materials are always superior, but because the presentation convinces the buyer of superiority. Limited editions, hidden releases, private access, these create the impression of rarity, and rarity breeds hunger. The same is true of individuals. When you project that your energy, attention, and approval are finite commodities, people begin to compete for them. They interpret your restraint not as neglect, but as proof of selectivity, as evidence that you hold yourself, and by extension them, to a higher standard. Yet the perception of value is fragile. One misstep, one lapse into neediness, one display of over-eagerness, and the illusion cracks. Once others see that you can be swayed cheaply, the mystique collapses, and the pursuit weakens. Maintaining value requires discipline, consistency, and an ability to mask your own desires while amplifying the sense of your worth. This does not mean arrogance. Arrogance is transparent and repels. It means quiet assurance, subtle gestures, and a refusal to overindulge those who have not proven themselves worthy of what you offer. The perception of value also thrives on mystery. People assign higher worth to what they cannot fully define. When they cannot predict your thoughts, they assume depth. When they cannot measure your resources, they assume abundance. When they cannot trace your next move, they assume strategy. Mystery allows imagination to do the heavy lifting, inflating your image beyond what you might construct directly. This is why the most captivating figures reveal only fragments of themselves. Enough to intrigue, never enough to satisfy. Once curiosity dies, pursuit follows it into the grave. In the context of negotiation, the perception of value determines leverage. A negotiator who reveals urgency is doomed, for the other party will sense the imbalance and exploit it. But the one who projects calm detachment, who signals that their participation is an opportunity rather than a necessity, forces the other party to raise their offer. They begin to believe that they are competing with unseen rivals. That time is running short, that the deal is at risk of slipping away. These beliefs, none of which may be true, inflate the value of what is being offered and compel concessions that eagerness could never earn. Even in the realm of personal ambition, perception reigns supreme. The world rewards those who seem destined for greatness, often long before greatness is achieved. Why? Because people respond to signals of inevitability, confidence, composure, selective engagement, as though they are proof of future triumph. They invest in the appearance of value, hoping to share in its eventual rewards. Thus, those who master the art of projecting value often find doors opening not because of who they are, but because of who others believe them to be. But perception alone cannot sustain power indefinitely. It must be underpinned by genuine development, by real competence, by an evolving reservoir of skill, strength, or wisdom. Otherwise, the illusion will eventually fracture, and the pursuit it inspired will dissolve. Yet even with real substance, perception remains the first gate, for the world does not examine value closely until it first believes it is there. And belief is born not from exposure, but from scarcity mystery, and the careful control of what is revealed and what is withheld. Strategic restraint power is not merely the ability to act, it is the ability to decide when not to act. Strategic restraint separates those who command respect from those who squander it. In a world where most individuals rush to seize every opportunity, speak every thought, and display every emotion, the one who holds back stands apart. Their silence is interpreted as calculation, their patience as foresight, their refusal to overextend as proof of control. Restraint is not passivity, it is the deliberate withholding of energy, attention, and action until the conditions promise maximum return. Consider the nature of impulse. Most people, when confronted with challenge or temptation, act instantly, fearing that hesitation might cost them an advantage. Yet impulse often erodes influence, for it reveals need. The negotiator who jumps at the first offer signals desperation and forfeits leverage. The leader who responds immediately to criticism seems defensive and unsettled, undermining their authority. The individual who confesses their desires too quickly diminishes the sense of mystery that might have deepened the other's interest. In all these cases, the lack of restraint invites a decline in value. Strategic restraint functions like a coiled spring. It appears still, yet stores potential energy, waiting for the precise moment when release will have the greatest effect. The key lies in recognizing that timing governs impact. Words spoken too soon are wasted, actions taken too early lose their force. But when one waits, allowing anticipation to grow and tension to build, the eventual move lands with greater weight, not only because of what it achieves, but because of the aura of deliberation surrounding it. People believe that what is rare is precious. The same is true of decisive action. This principle operates powerfully in human relationships. A person who floods another with constant attention diminishes their own influence, for their gestures become expected rather than valued. Yet the one who chooses moments carefully, who offers presents sparingly, who speaks with precision, who rewards sparingly, creates an atmosphere of significance around each interaction. The recipient begins to feel that these moments carry meaning, that they are deliberate rather than routine, and this sense of intentionality fuels desire. Restraint transforms ordinary gestures into extraordinary ones because it frames them as the result of choice rather than habit. In leadership, restraint is a weapon of perception. A ruler who interferes in every affair, who responds to every provocation, who saturates his presence across all matters, appears insecure, as though afraid of being forgotten. By contrast, the ruler who intervenes only at decisive moments, who allows lesser voices to quarrel while he watches from a distance, appears untouchable. His words carry more weight because they are fewer. His actions inspire more awe because they are rarer. Strategic restraint allows him to govern not by constant display, but by the careful release of power when it will yield the greatest psychological impact. Even in negotiation and conflict, restraint is often more potent than aggression. The person who reveals their eagerness to secure agreement or victory gives away their position, allowing the opponent to dictate terms. But the one who waits, who speaks last, who concedes nothing without pause, forces the other to reveal their hand first. This measured stillness unnerves rivals, leading them to wonder what hidden strength justifies such calm. In truth, the strength lies not only in resources, but in the discipline to avoid overplaying one's hand. Restraint creates doubt, and doubt compels others to act rashly, often to their own disadvantage. Strategic restraint also safeguards energy and focus. The world is filled with distractions, conflicts unworthy of attention, opportunities that promise little gain, provocations designed to test composure. Those who chase every spark exhaust themselves, leaving nothing for the moments that truly matter. But the restrained individual understands that power is finite. It must be deployed where it will generate momentum, not wasted in battles that hold no reward. This conservation of energy ensures that when action finally occurs, it is decisive and overwhelming, leaving no question as to where the balance of power resides. Another dimension of restraint lies in the withholding of information. Most people reveal too much of their plans, their desires, their emotions, believing that transparency will win trust or admiration. Yet exposure invites exploitation. The one who reveals less forces others to guess, to interpret silences, to wonder about intentions. This uncertainty works as a shield, preventing others from striking accurately, while magnifying the weight of every word eventually spoken. Restraint, in this sense, is not merely about action but about revelation, controlling what others know, what they think they know, and what they fear they do not. The power of restraint grows over time. Each moment of patience compounds the perception of control. Each refusal to overextend reinforces the image of strength. People come to see the restrained individual as someone who cannot be provoked, cannot be rushed, cannot be swayed by trivialities. This image commands respect, for it suggests mastery not only of circumstance but of self. And self-mastery, more than any external display, signals that one is fit to lead, to inspire, or to be pursued. Strategic restraint is not inaction. It is the art of waiting for the exact alignment of conditions before acting. It is the understanding that anticipation heightens desire, that silence amplifies authority, that scarcity magnifies value. It is the recognition that power leaks through constant exposure, but intensifies when held in reserve, only to be released in moments of undeniable significance. Magnetism of mystery. What cannot be fully seen becomes irresistible. The human mind is drawn not to what it knows completely, but to what it cannot fully grasp. Certainty breeds comfort, yet comfort breeds boredom. Mystery, by contrast, ignites curiosity and compels pursuit. The magnetism of mystery is rooted in an ancient truth. People long to fill the gaps in their knowledge, to uncover hidden depths, to discover the meaning behind what is withheld. The less you reveal, the more others imagine, and their imagination often paints you in colors brighter than reality could achieve. Mystery is not deception, it is restraint in revelation. It is the deliberate choice to leave parts of yourself, your plans, or your intentions concealed. When everything is placed openly on display, when thoughts are spoken without filter, when desires are confessed without hesitation, when strategies are explained in detail, the intrigue vanishes. People feel they have measured your worth and catalogued your essence. Nothing remains to wonder about, and where wonder ends, pursuit ends with it. Consider the dynamics of desire. A person who exposes their entire emotional landscape, who makes themselves fully available, who confesses every longing, becomes predictable. Predictability kills fascination. Yet the individual who leaves questions unanswered, who reveals only fragments of themselves, who speaks less than they know, creates a mental puzzle that others feel compelled to solve. They wonder what lies behind the calm expression, what thoughts stir behind the measured silence, what unspoken ambitions guide the restrained hand. This constant speculation keeps them engaged, not because they have been told everything, but because they have been told just enough to remain unsatisfied. In leadership, mystery operates as a force multiplier. A ruler who keeps his counsel close, who makes decisions without explaining every detail, who leaves his advisors debating the meaning of his smallest gesture, inspires an aura of depth and foresight. People assume that he sees beyond what they see, that he knows more than he reveals. Even when his plans are simple, the illusion of hidden complexity amplifies his authority. By contrast, the ruler who speaks too freely, who reveals every doubt and intention, diminishes his mystique. He invites scrutiny rather than awe, discussion rather than deference. Mystery also governs the art of negotiation. When you keep your ultimate terms concealed, when you withhold the full scope of your needs, when you allow the other party to guess what might sway you, you place them in a position of uncertainty. This uncertainty compels them to offer more than they otherwise would, for fear of misjudging your threshold. They begin to bargain not with what you have said, but with what they suspect you might demand. In this way, mystery shifts the balance of power, forcing others to reveal more than you do, to risk more than you risk, to give more than you give. But mystery must be cultivated carefully. Too much obscurity breeds suspicion, too little destroys intrigue. The key lies in revealing enough to inspire trust, yet never so much as to satisfy curiosity. In relationships, this may mean sharing glimpses of vulnerability while guarding the full depth of your emotions. In business, it may mean signaling confidence in your resources without parading them openly. In influence, it may mean demonstrating glimpses of capability while letting others wonder how much more lies unseen. The mastery of this balance ensures that pursuit never fades, for pursuit feeds on unanswered questions. Mystery also carries a psychological advantage. It forces others to overestimate you. When they cannot measure your abilities precisely, they fill the void with assumptions. Assumptions often inflated by their own fears and desires. They imagine that your silence hides strength, that your calm masks cunning, that your lack of disclosure signals leverage. These illusions work in your favor, compelling respect and caution, even when your true position is less formidable than they believe. The uncertainty alone is enough to grant you space, leverage, and influence. The magnetism of mystery extends beyond individuals to the very nature of ambition. A dream fully explained loses some of its allure. A strategy fully revealed invites countermeasures. Yet a vision wrapped in ambiguity invites others to believe it may hold more than meets the eye. This is why great figures of history often surrounded themselves with symbols, rituals, and veiled language, not merely to conceal, but to provoke imagination. They understood that people long not only for leaders and lovers, but for legends. And legends are born from what cannot be fully known. At its core, the magnetism of mystery is about leaving room for others to participate in your story. When they cannot define you, they begin to invent you. When they cannot predict you, they begin to follow you, hoping to learn what they cannot guess. When they cannot fully possess you, they begin to chase you, driven by the tantalizing possibility that the next moment, the next word, The next revelation will finally satisfy their curiosity. Though it never fully will, power is not seized through desperate pursuit. It is cultivated through detachment, withdrawal, value, restraint, and mystery. Those who master these principles cease to chase and begin to attract people, opportunities, influence, even destiny itself. The world bows to those who seem beyond its reach, who move with purpose rather than impulse, who speak less yet command more. But this mastery is not a single step. It is a way of thinking, a discipline of presence, and a lifelong game of perception and control. If you are ready to step beyond the ordinary, to command desire instead of being enslaved by it, to draw success toward you rather than chase it endlessly, this is only the beginning. More strategies await. Strategies hidden from the desperate, reserved for the calculating. Subscribe now and claim your place among those who do not beg for power, but silently compel it to come to them.